Hey guys, Chris here with theGoodOldGamer. So, I talk a lot about used video cards. In fact, I buy most of my PC parts on the secondhand market. I'm a sucker for the best possible value, and saving 20 bucks is better than spending 20 more dollars, in my opinion. Now, everybody's gonna be a little bit different, but in my comment section, there was actually a viewer, he was kind of curious about this. Now, he's new to PC gaming and PC hardware, so he wasn't really that comfortable with used hardware. So the request was to do a video talking about what you should do when you get a used piece of equipment. Now, I went ahead just the other day and I picked up a used GeForce 7800 GTX. This is gonna be used for a video that I'm working on. And I was like, okay, well, I have a used card coming in. Let me show you guys what it is that I do to make sure that everything's working and everything's good to go. So after that process, I'll go over a few more of my thoughts on buying secondhand, things to protect yourself. But let me go ahead and show you my process when getting in a brand new secondhand video card. Okay, so the first thing I recommend doing is just taking a can of air or an air compressor and just blowing out the heatsink. There's usually going to be dust, especially if the GPU's been used at all. It's going to have something in there, so might as well clean that stuff out. The next step is pretty critical. We have to test this out. Let's make sure the video card's working. There's no sense in doing a bunch of work if the GPU is bad. So plugging it into your system, turning it on, and hey, look, we're good to go. So we're looking pretty good already. The system's starting to boot into Windows. And there you go. A lot of you guys would probably stop right there going, hey, look, it works, and that's the end of it. But if you don't continue with the rest of the steps that I recommend, you may end up burning out your GPU before you get to really test it out. Now, with any used graphics card more than about 3 years old, you should absolutely re-thermal paste the GPU. So to do this, all you have to do is flip over the graphics card, identify all the screws. Usually the screws on the outside are going to be about the same size. There might be two different sizes, but usually they're all about the same. Just remember which holes that you're taking these out of. It's also a good idea to check on the back. Sometimes there's screws on here by the ports that can actually hold the heatsink on. This one right here, we're actually missing a couple of brackets for the DVI ports. It's not really a big deal, but there's no extra screws on here that are holding the heatsink in. Now, there's a little trick to removing these screws around the GPU die. You want to do them in a crisscross pattern. Typically, what I'll do is I'll loosen them up about 50% until I get to the last one, and then at that point, remove all of the screws. This way, if there's tension holding it on the die, you're not going to accidentally crack your GPU die. If you do it this way, you're going to be just fine. I've done this many, many times, so you'll be just fine. Now, after all the screws are removed, carefully flip over the GPU, unlike what I just did there, as the heatsink could just fall off, like you just saw. You want to keep it attached because you can damage the thermal pads underneath, which happens to be the case. We'll take a look at that here in a sec. What you want to do is you want to remove the power cable next, and then flip over the actual heatsink. Okay, so as you can see, these thermal pads are old. This is a really old graphics card, so I would normally replace these thermal pads, but I don't have any extras on hand. They all seem to be good enough to where they shouldn't have any problems putting them back on, but eventually it would be a good idea for me to remove and change out these thermal pads. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how to clean a CPU, because it's basically the same process, all you really need is just some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. That'll pretty much do it. But if you happen to live in a home where there are makeup wipes, this is a pro tip for you guys here, a little trick that I found out not too long ago. My wife actually has makeup wipes, and it's meant to absorb all the makeup and stuff off her face. And it's an alcohol-based, thing. So I'm like, all right, let's try this on removing some thermal grease. And it works great. It absorbs the thermal paste right off, and it makes it super easy to clean CPUs, GPUs, whatever. Just getting thermal paste off of these things, it's a lot easier. So if you have access to those, I do recommend it, or something similar to that. But you can get away with just a paper towel and some rubbing alcohol if that's all you have access to. Now, the wipe does leave a little residue, so you want to use the rubbing alcohol to clean off any of that residue and get the die as clean as possible, as well as the heatsink. Once everything's cleaned up, go ahead and grab yourself some thermal paste. It's just like what you do with a CPU. Now, everybody applies thermal paste a little bit differently. I do it the old school way. It's when you just put a little bit on the die, and then you spread it around with your finger, leaving just a small, thin amount on top. You don't want to overdo it. Making sure the die is completely covered. Once that's done, still got some left on your finger. I just put a little bit on the heatsink right where the die is going to be, and then clean my finger off, and boom, we're done. So next step is just do everything we already did, just in reverse. Just reassemble the entire GPU, and then we're good to go. Now, just a heads up, I do recommend taking it slow. You do have to line up the holes around the GPU die first, and make sure you put those screws in first after you plug in the power cord. So it'd be power cord first, line up the holes, and then screw in the screws around the GPU die. Once that's done, just plug all the rest of the screws in, and you're good to go. Well, alrighty guys, there you go. I mean, it's basic maintenance. Obviously, first thing you do, blow out the dust, go ahead and test the card out, make sure it's functional, and then go ahead and re-thermal paste the GPU. I even recommend if you buy secondhand motherboards that are more than about 5 years old, you want to remove the heat sinks on the North Bridge and South Bridge, and you want to re-thermal paste those as well, because that will get dry, it'll start cracking. I actually burned up a 750i SLI motherboard not too long ago because I forgot to do this. And that was brand new. That was never used. It was brand new, but it was like, 10 years old. Doesn't matter. You have to do it with older parts. That's just the way it goes. So hopefully this will save a lot of you guys from accidentally frying parts that don't need to die. Okay, so a few other tips when buying secondhand. First off, I like eBay. eBay's great because if there are any issues, you pop in your GPU, it doesn't work, you go ahead and immediately submit a claim. Also, if you get a package that's a little dinged up, this guy actually came in a soaked package and it was all beat to hell. And so I took a bunch of pictures, but it worked, so I don't really care. It's fine with me. But if it weren't, I could go ahead and just tell eBay that something happened. It's not my fault. I have pictures. You can send those in. Boom, you get your money back. And I'd say even half the time, especially on cheaper parts, I think this was only like 25 bucks, the sellers don't want to pay for that return shipping, so you get to keep it. And maybe it's not working, but you can salvage it, or maybe you can sell it then as is and make a few bucks off of it. So for wasting your time, you might even end up making a few bucks. So that's the reason why I like eBay. If you're going to buy off of somewhere like Craigslist or just anything local, make sure you can test it out. Unless you're getting it at a stupid good price where if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. You could just sell it as DOA and make your money back. That's not going to happen a lot of the time. So you want to make sure that you can test out the product before you buy it, especially if it's a couple $100 or more. Usually good sellers will allow you to come to their house. They'll have some sort of setup going so you can test it. But that's the main reason why I don't personally do that, because there's not a lot of good sellers in my area. First off, they want it way too much money. A lot of these people out there, they don't know anything about tech, so they're going to go ahead and try to charge some insane price. If it costs more than it does on eBay, obviously going local makes no sense, even though you can have it quicker. So personally, I recommend going with some sort of way that has protection. So like eBay, I think AliExpress has some sort of warranty protection, and other big websites out there do. Now, if you're going to buy local, buy from a friend or from a business. Businesses are usually very reliable. They test them out just like I do. They might not re-thermal everything. They'll just pop it in, make sure it works, but usually you'll be okay there. So secondhand stores, things like that would be all right. Well, alrighty guys, I hope this helps you out, especially if you're newer to PC gaming. And I hope you feel a little bit more confident with secondhand parts. Personally, I've had one bad GPU out of probably 70. Somewhere in that range. I know I haven't done 100, but I know it's more than 50. But I've had one bad one, and I could tell immediately it was no good. Just right off the bat. And I got my money back immediately. All I had to do was stick the thing in the mail, and I didn't pay a penny for it. So, worked out great for me. Other than that, motherboards, like I said, never had a problem with any motherboards, no CPUs, RAM. Everything else that I've gotten is good. I've had a bad hard drive fail on me secondhand, but don't buy hard drives secondhand. Any sort of storage, don't do that. Motherboards, CPUs, RAM, GPUs, you're usually pretty good with those components. and I would buy everything else new. Power supplies, I definitely would not buy secondhand. Not unless it's from like a friend or like a business. Even then, they'll have like a 90-day warranty on them. Power supplies can be a little finicky, so I would get those new as well. Well, alrighty guys, that's about all I have to say on the subject. If you found this useful, please let me know down in the comment section below. If you're new to PC gaming, share this around. Maybe some of your friends have the same sort of trepidation about secondhand parts. It's really not that bad. It's not that difficult to do. As long as you have a little screwdriver and a little bit of patience, you can make it work. As long as it's not busted to begin with, you can go ahead and make sure that's going to last a long, long time. But once again, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. And if you guys like this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share with friends. That really does help me out. And for as little as $1 a month, if you'd like to help support the channel over on Patreon, really helps me get tech like this on hand so we can do cool stuff. And I really want to thank everybody who has supported the channel. And that's all I have for today, and I will catch you guys in the next video.